kids have been rehearsing a little something for you guys, and we're starting it early, I know. I know some of you don't like us early Christmas people, but I'm one of them. But we are starting an Advent countdown with our kids this year, and each week they're going to be coming in and they're going to be doing a reading about the Christmas story, just a countdown to get us excited about Christmas. We have Advent wreath over here that each week they're going to be lighting a candle on. So they're very excited to show you what they've been working on. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this.
As we start thinking about the holiday season and get ready to celebrate with family and friends, we also get ready for the beginning of Advent. The word Advent means a coming. Advent is a time for Christmas to prepare for the coming of Jesus, as we remember his birth in Bethlehem a long time ago.
Each of the 4 candles on our wreath represent one Sunday before Christmas. The 5th candle represents Christ and his birth and his place in the center, just as Jesus was in the center of our lives. The wreath is a circle and doesn't have a beginning or an end, and represents God and his love for us that will also never end. Evergreen branches are attached to the wreath to stand for the everlasting life we live through and our belief of Christ, our Savior. Today we light each candle an Advent wreath, which is called the candle of prophecy.
The book of Isaiah 7:14 says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. birth to his son. A prophecy is a message from God that is brought to God's people by a chosen prophet. In the Old Testament, God promised to send a Savior to deliver his people. Isaiah's prophecy telling that the Savior would be born to a virgin was recorded over 700 years ago before the birth of Christ, or Jesus. This prophecy is only one of more than 200 that were fulfilled when Jesus came as God's gift to mankind.
The Gospel of Matthew 1:21 says, "She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." The name given to the Son of God was also a prophecy, because the Hebrew meaning of the name Jesus is "he will save." Jesus was more than just the name that the Son of God would be called. It was telling what he would do.
The prophecies in God's Word told us that the Savior would come from the family tree of David, be the light mankind, arrive from Bethlehem, come to the tribe in Judah, and be born of a virgin. God's Word is God's promise, and his promise come true. Please stand with us and join us as we sing A Way into Nature.
Grab these. I want you to make sure that you write a note to every single one of them today. Put those in the boxes. Not you personally. Get some help. Someone that they can read the writing. All right, everyone else, if you have a seat, please. Thanks, you guys and gals. We appreciate that. All righty, we have been in the midst of a series, and the guy that named the series is the guy that's running the camera. Rick, are you able to get pretty close to that anyway? You got it? Okay, we missed this last week because Rick was checking in on something, but that symbol, we're all out to be dark knights. And so that symbol right there is our second superhero that we're trying to emulate. The first one obviously being Jesus, but the second is dark knights. So for those of you who thought this was Bethlehem, it's Gotham City. We're overseeing it, so we're good to go. That's what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. And so today is the final part of that series. If you don't bow your heads with me, please, and we'll dive in here in just a little bit. God, we thank you for this time. We thank you for your love. Lord, our desire Lord, is to show your light, especially during this darkest time of the year. So God, I pray that as we finish up the series today, Lord, that we understand just how we are able to do so. So God, we love you. We thank you for many blessings. In your name we pray, amen. So week 1, we looked into Luke, and we talked about how Peter fought the wrong enemy. And then in week 2, we went into Matthew. We found out that Peter fought at the wrong time, and he fought with the wrong attitude. And I gave away part of week 3, which we're going to dive into the book of John. So this is a story, obviously, Jesus going to his death, that when you read these in the Gospels, they tell you a little bit different for each story. So to have you kind of understand this, because sometimes I don't think we always understand with the Gospels why they're put together, where they're put together. But to me, the Gospels are a lot like Starburst. And if you're wondering why, it's because, first off, in Starburst there are 4 different flavors. And they know the 4 different flavors? Okay, of course, one of my kids knows all the flavors. Cherry, strawberry, lemon, and orange. So what we want to do is when we dive into the Gospels, the first thing is we're going to unwrap them. So I'm going to unwrap this pack of Starburst, and let's see how we do in this. Okay, first off, whose favorite flavor, oh, here we go. Whose favorite flavor is, let's go random, orange. Okay. We have orange people here? Okay, great. All right. Whose favorite flavor is strawberry? All right. Whose favorite flavor is the red one? Whatever the red one is. Cherry. Okay, and then whose favorite flavor is lemon? Okay, listen, I'm just going to tell you so you know. My wife, yesterday, her exact term was, well, no one's going to like lemon. Nobody wants to be the lemon starburst. So who's the lemon starburster? Nellie, you were a lemon starburster? All right. I don't have so many of them, all right? So in this package, we ended up with 3 of the dark red, we ended up with 3 of the orange, we ended up with 3 of the pink, and we ended up with 3 of the yellow. Oh, I wonder if they did that on purpose. Oh, it's in order? I don't really eat Starburst enough. What kind of Starburst aficionado am I? What? Those Skittles will count those. All right, we can't just, how many flavors are in Skittles? There's 4 flavors of Skittles? Wait, who said 5? She knows Skittles. What's your church know about? You know candy. All right. All right, there we go. So I guess there's the same number in each one of them. But here's the deal. Some of us love the red. Some of us love the pink. Some of us love the orange. Some of us love the yellow. At Halloween, they actually have ones you can pass out. And they're just the 2 flavor ones. And so when you get those, there's part of this hope, this excitement that's involved. And when you open it up, to hopefully get at least one of your favorite colors. But if you're a lemon person, you open up and you're like, orange and strawberry, are you kidding me? And if you're a cherry person, you're like, oh, I got 2 lemons. Then you say the thing, well, nobody wants to be the lemon, right? We all, at the end of the day, what do we do with those Starbursts? We still eat them, right? We still unwrap them, we complain all about them, and I don't really get this, we chew it up, and like, I'm not really a lemon guy, but you know what? I'll go ahead and eat both the lemons that I just got. Or I'll eat the pink and the orange, and then what do? We go back and we grab another pack, and then that hope starts again to where we can unwrap that package and like, yes, I got my favorite one, whatever that color might be. The Gospels are a lot like that, where we start to read them, and at times we don't necessarily understand them. So we'll dive into Matthew and start reading and go, this doesn't really seem like it's for me, and I'm not really understanding it wholeheartedly. And it's kind of like, no offense, Nellie, no offense, Sally, it's kind of like a lemon Starburst, which she's really happy with right now. And so she's like, so maybe I'll just go on to Mark then. And Mark's kind of like strawberry. Where, I like strawberry, and it's short, it's quick, and it's to the point. I get this and boom, we're good to go. But if I don't really get it, and I'm not really a strawberry person, let me try to go to Luke. So when I go to Luke, Luke is orange. When I go to orange, nothing rhymes with orange. And was the orange named first, or was the color orange named first? And I start to think about all these things, because Luke, there are so many different things happening. There's so much involved with it. But still, at the end of the day, it's not really for me. And yet each one of those Gospels tells a story and tells it a different way. Matthew is written by a Jew and for the Jews. So if you were to start a Jewish person in the Gospel, you would send them to Matthew. And Mark was written to the Romans, very short, to the point. Listen, I don't need it sugar-coated, just tell me like it is. Okay, here it is. Jesus died for your sins. He died on the cross. He rose again 3 days later. It's God's one and only Son. Boom, there we go. We just summed up the Gospel of Mark, right? And then Luke. Luke was written by a Greek to the Greeks. He was a physician. He covered everything. He was a historian. He is the first historian, basically, that we really see that as far as covering things. He is made fun of many times because a lot of things in Luke we don't see normally except for from a historical standpoint. But Luke broke everything down, and the thing about it is Luke is the most criticized of all of the writers because of his detail. But here's the amazing thing. The more geography that is unearthed, the more times people go down and they start to look at different things in that area, the more that Luke is proven right. He had the detail after detail after detail. And yet still at times we read it and we're like, man, I want this chapter to end because it's, it's more than 25 verses and I don't like reading past 25 verses and this one has 52, this has 80 verses and so much. So let me go to John. And John to me is cherry. John to me is the red book because red's my favorite. And whatever your favorite color of Starburst is, that's the book of John. And the reason for that within that gospel is it's written differently than any other of the gospels. And the reason I saved it for last. I don't like John just because I happen to have the name John. I like John because the way it's written about God's love for us. And it's completely different than any of the other gospels. So you start off with all the history, you start off with all the facts and all the things that were taking place, but remember it was written to the audience. And so when John was written to you and John was written to me. It was written to the Gentiles. If you're not a Jew, you're a Gentile. And at the end of the day, what happened with the Gentiles is many times they didn't feel God's love. They were constantly told, you're not the chosen people. You're not the best of the best. You're not the perfect ones. You're not God's own people. In fact, many times when we look at Jesus when he overturns the tables, we think that Jesus is overturning the tables and the temples because of the money that was being exchanged. And that was part of the reason. But the reason that Jesus was so angry about them cashing in all this money is that they had taken the place that was set for the Gentiles. You see, the chosen people of the Jews, the chosen people of the temple, this place was, the outer area was for the Gentiles to go into and to pray. And they had taken that away from them. And Jesus said, enough is enough, because God's message isn't just for the Jews. God's message isn't just for the Romans, and it isn't just for the Greeks. God's message is for everyone. And so once again, if you're not considered a Jew, you're a Gentile. And it's for the Gentiles, which is for you and for me. So in this final message today, that's where we're going to go to. We're going to be in John chapter 18. And as we dive into this message today, I would ask you right where you sit, when God speaks in John, who is he speaking to? And the answer is he's speaking to us. In each of the Gospels, he's trying to speak to us. It's whether or not we allow it. But because we read Matthew, we're like, yeah, that's kind of not really all that important to me. And with Mark, maybe he's a little bit too much and too straight to the point. I need a little more information. But Luke, he's kind of over top when it comes to the information. John will speak to you and to me through God's love. And through the amazing relationship that took place between God and his Son and the people in which he touched. So John chapter 18 is where we're going to start today. We're going to start ahead just a little bit, and then we're going to dive back in. Starting at John chapter 18, we're going to start in verse 23. It says, Jesus replied, if I said anything wrong, you must prove it. But if I'm speaking the truth, why are you beating me? So what has taken place is that Jesus is now in front of the high priest. And by the way, your version might be a little bit different. I'm preaching today from the New Living Translation. The Bible's in front of you are NIV, and the version up here is the newer NIV. It might be slightly different. We'll talk about some of that as we go through. But Jesus replied, if I said anything wrong, you must prove it. But if I'm speaking the truth, why are you beating me? And what has taken place is that here's Jesus, and he's before the high priest, who, by the way, is not supposed to be the actual high priest. But he wanted to start things off. He's been replaced because that's what the Romans did. And so they're having a conversation back and forth. And when the answer comes out, and it's not the answer that should be given to a high priest, one of the people there literally slaps Jesus across the face. And so he says these words. And he says to him, hey, listen, why is it that you're doing that? If I said anything wrong. So if Jesus has said anything wrong, you must prove it. You must prove it. He's putting share one thing that I shared about God's law that was not in line with God's law. Tell me the things just so that I know and I can understand it while we're all standing here before everyone in this illegal trial where no one should be, and yet you came to get me, you brought me in here. Once again, none of this should even be taking place according to your rules and according to your law and according to how you have your court set up. This shouldn't even be taking place, and yet you slap me across the face. So just tell me what it is that I did wrong. So in your struggles in life, in your struggle with your finances, in your struggle with how you treat people, in your struggles of superiority, in your struggles of procrastination, in your struggles of how you treat your spouse or how you talk to your kids, in your struggles of the things that well up inside, anxiety and worry, in your struggles of dealing with teachers, and in your struggles of dealing with other students, in all of these struggles, what is it exactly that Jesus did wrong? And when we ask that question, and we put ourselves in a situation, we find out many times that it really isn't Jesus that did anything wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong. In fact, he's the one, at the end of the day, that was the one that really had my back. He was the one that I could turn to give me the words that I needed to hear. He was the one that he loved people right where they were, and he loves me right where I live. And yet, for whatever reason, it's also the first place and the first person that I go to when I blame something or blame someone. Come on, God, are you asleep at the wheel? Can you not see what's going on with my kids? This is totally unfair. How could these people who don't even know you, or these people that profess to know you, how could they treat my child like that? When's it going to stop? Come on, God, I've done everything right. I get up and I pray. I read all the devotions. I do all these things. Why is it that I'm struggling in my relationship with my spouse? Lord, are you kidding me? That guy got the promotion over me. I've put all this time in. I've done all these things. I've been a light for you. And you're going to allow that guy to get ahead of me? And so many times, the one that has our back is the one that we feel is almost on our back, and we push the blame to him. And yet, Jesus shared these words walking to his death, and he said this: if I've said anything wrong, if I've done anything wrong, go ahead, prove it. Prove it. Let's go to the backstory now. We're going to start in verse 1 of chapter 18. And here's leading up to it. Once again, we've looked at it from Matthew's standpoint. We've looked at it from Luke's standpoint. This is from John. After saying these things, Jesus crossed the Kidron Valley with his disciples and entered a grove of olive trees. Now, some of the other versions, they say the Garden of Gethsemane. It was very important for Luke for them to understand it was a Garden of Gethsemane. For John, it was like, listen, we're just going to a place where there's olive trees. Olive trees, if you've ever looked at them on Google and you ever want to do a search, are amazing. They're literally thousands of years old. They kind of get wider and wider. They don't get super, super tall. But when they're there, you know that they're in this area. And they're not moving. They have to be cut down, pulled out, the roots, all that kind of stuff. And so when these things start to grow, that is an olive area, and it is left alone. And it gets older and older and older. But it's also a great reminder, because with those olives, it's not only the olives that grow, but it's the oil which brings value from it. And in this olive grove, this is a place where you not only press these olives to bring out what the value is, but also, in Jesus' case, that he's going to get pressed so we can start to see the value of Jesus. So it's very symbolic that within these olive trees, within this area where we press to bring all the value, is the one who's going to get pressed. And we're going to see how it is that he reacts to what is going to take place. Judas, the betrayer, knew this place because Jesus had often gone there with his disciples. So we already see that this is a place that is very much a place that people understand and the disciples know, and they've been there before. The Pharisees had given Judas a contingent of Roman soldiers and temple guards to accompany him. We're going to stop here for a second. It says, now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met with disciples. So Judas came to the garden guiding a detachment of soldiers. Now, one of your versions may say a cohort. And so one of the things that John points to that we don't even realize, he gives us the exact amount of Roman soldiers that came with the temple police, that came with all the high priests and all their servants to get Jesus. And we know that with Jesus, he's probably hanging out with 12 guys. In this case, 11, because one of them has turned against him. But a cohort, a contingent, this detachment, that means they sent 600 Roman soldiers with these people just to go and arrest Jesus. 600. Now, there's two ways to look at that. One, it's complete overkill. Or number two, they're really worried that he has so much power that he could use that power and turn this on us completely. And we believe there's so much power in him that this could happen. In other words, to me, what this says is these guys realize that he may actually be just who he said he is. And so I'm going to bring as much firepower as I possibly can. And we were assigned 600 soldiers, plus the temple police, plus all of us, plus all of our guys and all of our servants. We're going to take everybody into these olive groves and we're going to come after him. It says, now with blazing torches, lanterns, and weapons, they arrived at the olive grove. So here's the thing. They came in and they're like, we are sending a message. You're going to see all these lanterns. You're going to see these torches. You're going to know that we are coming because they don't have street lights. This place is completely dark. And so the disciples are standing with Jesus. They've been sleeping. He's been praying. They're in these olive groves, and all of a sudden, all this light comes. And it's not like a flickering of light. You're going to have torches after torches and lanterns after lanterns because you've got all of your people plus 600 soldiers alongside of you. So they know it's now this mob mentality, and they're coming for him. Jesus fully realized that what was going on Jesus fully realized all that was going to happen to him. Jesus fully realized, he completely understood. So he stepped forward to meet them, and he asked them this question. Who is it that you are looking for? Notice what takes place here. Jesus doesn't sit back. He doesn't turn to the disciples and say, run and hide. He doesn't say, try to climb the trees and get there. He doesn't say, listen, they're coming that way. You guys go this way. Let's all scatter and let's get out of here. He has his disciples with him. When they're coming to get him, he doesn't fall into the ranks with the other 12 guys. Jesus takes a step forward to them. And taking that step forward is not only recognizing who Jesus is, but also showing that he is there to protect the ones that he loves. But if there's any question as to what's going on, Jesus starts the conversation. And he says, who are you looking for? He asked. Jesus the Nazarene, they replied. And he says, I am he. And if you notice this, let's make sure this says this. Who is it? You one? Oh, go back, please. When Jesus says, I am he, in my version, this is why I used it. My version says, I am, and that A is capitalized, which I think is very important. Because it was God, and these people knew at this time it was God, and they understood that when you said, I am, and it said, I am, that only God is the great I am. And so when Jesus said this, he was saying to you, listen, I am he. God is he. You're standing in the midst of God. In this place where all the pressure's coming about, you brought all your lanterns, you brought all your torches, you brought everything. And when he said, I am, he showed right then, I'm stepping forward to let you know that God is here right before you. Now, how is it that you would react? Well, how is it I would react? How is it the disciples would react? Well, let's see what happens. He says, I am he. Jesus said, and Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. In other words, Jesus said, I'm taking a step forward. I am here to protect. And when they found out that he said, I am, they meaning I am God, meaning I am he, they didn't argue with him, did they? They recognized that the very person they were coming to get, they said, all these people, we are in the midst of God. And they took a step back and they fell forward. They fell prostrate. They fell down at their knees and they bowed down before God. This is God standing before me. All of these people drop down, and all of these disciples standing here with Jesus see this. What an amazing thing had to take place. What power they had to see from this loving man who stepped forward to protect them, and then his very power, in which God had granted him, being God's Son, his one and only Son, every single Roman soldier, temple guard, priest, servant, all stepped back and fell down prostrate to him because of two words. And see, that's the power that Jesus can have in our lives. And that's the power that when Jesus says his words, that we can claim. And that's the power that we can rest in every single day. Because too many times, we're out to try to worry about the arguments and know the Scripture and have everything in the Bible. We want to have God's power and know God's power and everything about it. And we don't realize that we don't have to protect God. God's big enough to protect himself. God has this. And as the example and what he shows us today, he is willing to step forward right where you live today. Right in the struggles that you have, right in the struggles I have. And some of you are going, listen, you don't know my struggles. I don't. Some of you are going, oh, you do know my struggles, and I do. And some of us, we have these struggles that at times we think there's no way that God is interested enough in me and in my struggles to care. There was 12 guys standing there with him that day, and he cared enough to step forward. And everyone stepped back and it had fallen down. And I believe, because of the words of Jesus has shared, that he would have stood up for any one of them at any time. And he's going to show us that in just a little bit. He wasn't there to just protect the disciples. He was there to protect all. All. The Jews, the Gentiles, the Romans, the Greeks. He was there to protect all of them. He cared about each one of them specifically. He believed that God had sent him not just for the world, but for each person specifically, because that's how big God is. And these people in this olive grove recognize the power in Jesus' voice and the power that God had given him. The stories continued. And again they replied, Jesus the Nazarene, I told you that I am he, Jesus said. And since I am the one you want, let these others go. So we see that he is in protection mode. Since you're here to get me, all of you guys who took it back and you stepped down, since you're here to get me, let the rest of these people go. He did this to fulfill his own statement, I did not lose a single one of these that you have given me. Not those that I hang out with. Not the ones called the disciples. Not the guys that happen to know a lot of the verses. The ones that you have given me. See, God understands relationship. God understands what it means to dwell. God understands what it means to be with us. It's up to us whether or not we choose to recognize it. Because God has recognized it all along. Does that mean you can walk the hallways with Jesus? Absolutely. Does that mean Jesus could be in the middle of science class talking about evolution? Absolutely. He could be in my field. He could be in my court, whether I'm a coach or a player. He could be in my workforce. He could be on me with my drive to work. He could be with me when I'm dealing with these kids that I don't want to deal with. He could be with me here in church. Absolutely. Because for all those that trust and believe, you have been given to him. But do we act like it? Do we recognize his power? And the truth is, most of the times we don't. Because we do what Peter did. We bring the wrong weapon. We have the wrong attitude. And we do things for all the wrong reasons. The story continues, says, then, and here's the next thing that happened, then Simon Peter drew a sword and slashed off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's slave. Stop for a second. John's the only person that names who this person is. He's the only one that names who the high priest's servant is. And he says Malchus. And here's this guy who's just lost his ear. The reason he probably lost his ear is because he probably tried to get out of the way. And as it got lopped off, this Malchus, who now no longer has an ear, he's just there to be a servant. He's just there to carry a robe or to carry garb or whatever it might be for the high priest. But Jesus said to Peter, put your sword back into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given you? Now, one of the versions says that Jesus picked up the ear, put it back on, and made him whole. But see, John wants to point out something to us, and he's sharing this with us, and sometimes we don't see it. Here is Malchus. Malchus means something to Jesus. And so when he stepped forward to protect the disciples, he then also stepped forward to protect Malchus, because his message is so big, and it's for every one of us. Why? Because God is I am. And the great I am can take care of any pain, can take care of any heartache, can take care of anything that's going on the inside, and can heal anything on the outside. But Malchus is someone to God. Peter is someone to God. His disciples and all believers, each and every person is someone to God, because we have been given to Him. Put your sword back into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me? So he says this to Peter because, here's the bottom line, Peter. I've been telling you for a while the suffering's coming. I knew it was coming. I could have told you to run. I could have called on angels. I could have done any of those things. Peter, I've already told you you're going to deny me 3 times. And maybe you're doing this because you want to show me that you're my best friend and that you're not going to deny me, whatever it is. And it's going to look good here for a moment. But then all of a sudden, just like those olives, it's going to start to press. And the further it gets pressed, you have to make a decision, and I have to make a decision. Am I going to allow God to press down on me so hard that what comes out of me is valuable to others so that they can see God? See, we used the wrong weapon. Peter chose the wrong weapon. But in that moment, God turned it into something that only God can. All of these things that are meant for evil, God can turn into good. In these dark times of the year, God can turn that darkness into light. He'll pierce it in such a way that you can only see God. It's whether or not we choose to allow Him to do so. And then the other side of Peter is this. He's doing it for all the wrong reasons. So many times we look to protect God when God doesn't need protecting. So when Jesus stood forward, He said, put your sword back into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me? He's already said, I know I'm dying for you. I know He died for you. I know that He died for me. I believe that He is the great I am. Do you believe that He is the great I am? Do we walk every day as if His power is walking with us? Because He promised us when He left that He would give us His Holy Spirit. And if that Holy Spirit indwells us and lives here within us and is a part of us, do we walk each day with that? Or do we stop going, yeah, I don't think this is a good time right now. I'm not sure that, I don't know all the verses and I'm not sure exactly what to say. You're not even called to do that. He didn't stop Peter and say, Peter, quote this verse. Peter, tell them what 1 Chronicles says. Peter, tell the story of Noah. Peter, tell them the whole David and Goliath. He didn't do any of that, did he? He stepped forward and He loved. He stepped forward and He cared. He stepped forward and He healed. In this darkest time of the year, that's what we're called to do. And if people want to argue, and people want to put God down, and people want to, what about this, and ask you questions that you don't even know the answers to, and you're not sure, rather than step back, understand that He's already stepped forward for you, and He's taking care of it. So all those arguments, all those conflicts, all those confrontations, you can put them away. All you have to do is love. If a person is thirsty, you give them water. If they're cold and you have on 2 shirts, you give them 1 shirt. If they're hungry, you take them food. If they need something for clothing or blankets, whatever it might be, and you have the means to get it, you take it to whoever it's going to help. In the front room in front of us, I don't know how many kids are in there, but last night they came together. And they put together boxes. And they're sending them to our college students and our military that we know of. And so there's about 15 boxes that are going to get sent out to these kids. You know why? Because when you go off to college, people forget about you. Sometimes even your family forgets about you. And you know what? The students forget about their parents. I'll text my son, hey man, how you doing? Who is this? Dad. Dad who? Right? I mean, some of those the conversations we have. We're praying for them, we're loving them, we're letting them know that we're there. They go off, and it's all of a sudden it's like this cliff that they go off of. And so when no one talks to them, no one reaches out to them for 14 and 15 weeks, they're not looking forward to coming back to go to church about it. Kids that go off to school now, it's a 51% chance that they're going to walk away from their faith. Which means we haven't taught them that God is so powerful that you can stand for your faith and stand up in your faith. And you want to know how you do it? You just love. And so these boxes are being prayed over. And after Thanksgiving, they're going to be sent to them when it's the last 2 weeks of their semester. If there's any of the college students who are way and they're here today, I ruined the surprise for you, sorry. But when you open it, go, oh, it's so cool. But there's a reason for it. We want them to walk back across that threshold to a place that they believe and they belong. To faces and to people who also believe in a place that they belong. And then when we leave and walk back across that threshold, that we believe the words above that says, I am now walking into my mission field. And I'm going to go out and love and care for whoever it is that God brings into my life. Even when they get mad at me, even when they get upset with me, even when they want to fight with me, I'm just going to put it aside because I already know that God has stepped up and He's already got it handled. And all I got to do is love Him. That's all. It's so simple. Yet we make it so difficult. Listen, Peter screwed this up left and right. He denied Christ 3 times. Last time to his face. He messed this up so badly. And you know what God did? He came back for that guy. And He built His church on that guy. And if He can do that in his life, what can the great I Am do in yours? And the answer to it is, whatever we allow Him to. Last verse is this. So the soldiers, their commanding officers, and the temple guards arrested Jesus and tied Him up. Why did He do that? Why did He allow this? He, Jesus, in the words that He shared and He wrote, that John wrote, He gave them permission to. Put your sword back into its sheath. Shall I not drink from the cup of suffering the Father has given me? It's my time. It's okay. This has to happen. And this cup of suffering I'm going to take on as your cup of suffering and my cup of suffering. And I'm going to do it for everyone. To all those that trust and believe. And all I'm asking you to do in return is to quit fighting for all the wrong reasons. Quit taking the wrong weapon into battle. Have an attitude that shows others who I am. Quit fighting at all the wrong times. Just take the love that I've given you and share it with others. And show it to others. And be that light in this darkest time of the year. And through that, others will know that you are my children, my disciples, my fishers of men. They will know it because they can't help but see the great I Am. All right, we sit today. If you just bow your heads, I want you to just take a few minutes. The praise team's going to come up, and they're just going to play here for a little bit. I know there's so many times that we just want to prove God and fight for God and protect God, and that's not what God's calling us to do. God can handle all that on His own. But there are so many times, too, that for the wrong reasons, we just kind of get off kilter. We allow obstacles that could be opportunities. We fight the wrong enemy. We fight the wrong time. We have a terrible attitude, whatever it might be. And yet there's loved ones around us, and there's people that we've never met before that just need to see a little bit of light during this darkest time of the year. So as Andy's playing here a little bit, I want you to just take this time, and I want you to talk to God. I want you to have a discussion with Him and say, all right, God, this is just me and you time now. Where is it that I can be a dark night in these dark nights? Where is it that I can show your light to others? In the words that I say, in the deeds, and the things I do. Not faith in words, not faith on words, but faith that works. Because I know there are people who are struggling. I'm struggling a little bit. But God, would you help me to rescue you, to know that you are the great I Am. hopefully church